Welcome inside Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price, following a 22-11 Green Bay Packers victory over the New England Patriots in the 2015 preseason opener. But Chris, I would say it's safe to say that that's not what everybody's talking about. They're talking about the two quarterbacks who indeed started this game. Aaron Rodgers, number 12 for the Green Bay Packers, and number 12, Tom Brady for the New England Patriots. They had a moment after the game where they hugged. You had a chance to talk with Aaron Rodgers after the game in his post-game press conference. What was your biggest takeaway, because Tom Brady did not speak?
He respectfully declined to talk about the conversation that they had after the game, but he said, look, Tom's a friend. I know he's going through some stuff right now, and hopefully it gets resolved sooner rather than later. It was a bit of a surprise, given all the stories we've heard over the last 24 hours about Brady, whether or not he would play, whether or not he would even be here. There was some question as to whether he would be here or in New York, continuing with the whole Deflategate nonsense. But it was, I think, a welcome sign for Patriots fans to see him here tonight. Had 7 snaps, the fewest number of snaps he has ever taken in a preseason opener since he became the starter back in 2001. 1 for 4, 1 completion, 10 yards, I believe it was, to Brandon Gibson. Looked good in limited action, but again, 7 snaps, you got to start somewhere, right? So I do think that they were probably the most satisfactory preseason snaps he's taken, at least dating back to 2009 when he was coming off the knee injury that wiped out pretty much all of the 2008 season.
He got many standing ovations, as you would expect, when he first took the field here on Thursday evening to Jay-Z's PSA, his annual march onto the field anthem, if you will, and the applause began and the ovations began for him at that moment, and they really carried on through the starting lineup introductions and through, of course, his first snap of the game. Your impressions of what he really did look like?
I thought he was okay. I think at the same time you have to take everything with a grain of salt when you consider the people around him. There was no Julian Edelman. There was no Brandon LaFell. There was no LeGarrette Blount. Rob Gronkowski played a single series. The 3/5 of the starting, I think 3/5 of the starting offensive line were not there, the 2 tackles and the starting center. So I think you have to take all that into account. I think that being said, I think he was okay. This is what you look for in a preseason opener. You know, you just want to get your feet wet. You know, you want to get your legs underneath you. You want to get the snaps you need to start the season. I think we saw that from Brady tonight.
Let's move on to the other quarterback that played for the Patriots tonight, and he had a very up-and-down night. A lot of people are going to look at those 7 sacks, and I had a chance to ask Jimmy Garoppolo after the game about those 7 sacks, and he said, yeah, I think part of it is I could definitely get rid of the ball quicker in the pocket. There's no question about that, but Belichick and Garoppolo both talked about after the game they have to look at the film because some of those sacks were due to, obviously, offensive line breakdowns. There's one that I believe it was Trey Jackson, gave up. He was blocking down on a linebacker over the middle, or on the nose tackle, I should say, over the middle, and a linebacker shot the gap and got to Garoppolo. Your impressions and evaluation, just based on what you saw with your own eyes on how Garoppolo did.
I think, again, you take it with a grain of salt, just like, as you know, we said with Brady. I think when you look at the people around him, you look at the fact he took 7 sacks, and that's not great. But at the same time, you look at the fact that they were mixing and matching along the offensive line. They had David Andrews working as center. They moved Andrews over to guard at one point, and they moved Klein over to center. You're going with third and ostensibly fourth teamers at that point. So I think he did okay once he stopped forcing the ball to Josh Boyce, a young man who really didn't have a good night tonight. When he spread the ball around, he was a little bit more consistent. I think he showed a little bit more of what they were looking for. I do think he got good performances by some of the guys around him. I think when you look at the performance by Brandon Gibson, Chris Harper, just 2 of the guys who really, at least for me, from a statistical standpoint, stood out. So I think it was a mixed bag, to your point. I think there were some good things, there were some bad things. But again, it's the same as it was with Brady. I think you just want to get your feet underneath you. You know, when you're looking at these preseason openers and how guys do, you don't really want to look at the numbers. You want to look at individual plays. And I think there were some good individual plays, and I think there were some plays that he left out there on the field.
Chris Harper, I believe it was 7 catches on 7 targets. That's a perfect, obviously a perfect ratio, and he's a rookie free agent out of Cal, a guy that's, realistically trying to stick maybe with the team on the practice squad, make an impression on the Patriots that he could be good down the road.
Exactly. He was a guy who tonight, both he and to a lesser extent Brandon Gibson, I think Harper did a really good job taking advantage of the opportunities that were given to him. Josh Boyce maybe not so much, but Harper was really consistent, really dependable in the passing game tonight. He showed a little bit of special teams flair, so I think he is certainly trending in the right direction right now. The question is, especially with these young guys, can they continue to build on that? Can they continue to stack success on top of each other and build to a point where they're a true candidate for the 53-man roster? As it stands right now, you don't know if Harper's going to land a spot on the final 53, but he certainly looks like that kind of guy who could be a help on practice squad. If he continues to build in the right direction, then good things are going to continue to happen for him.
Jonas Gray had two big plays, the 55-yard touchdown run where he cut inside the left tackle and then cut outside, and Bill Belichick said there was really no one who touched him on his way to the end zone, which works two ways. Either A, it was not a great defensive job of sealing lanes and making sure that the defensive ends and linebackers had the responsibilities, or B, that Jonas Gray did a good job running to daylight, and that's what you ask a running back to do. He also did a nice job on the ensuing two-point conversion, which the Patriots converted on, but that was their only touchdown of the night.
Jonas Gray, and our friend Shalise Manziyoung of the Boston Globe had the best line about Jonas Gray. Jonas Gray's alarm clock did not rob him of the ability to run the football. Jonas Gray's alarm clock just kept him out of practice and caused him to kind of fall off the radar screen. You're looking at a guy in Jonas Gray who right now certainly sets up to be a quality backup to LeGarrette Blount. You want to talk about a guy, again, we talked about Harper and his ability to make the most of his opportunities. Jonas Gray did that tonight. He certainly sets up to be the kind of guy that they're going to lean on probably a little bit more than they did last year when you're talking about the running game. He's going to work as a complementary guy, at least as it stands right now, to LeGarrette Blount. You're going to mix Brandon Bolden in there, but he certainly did very well with his opportunities tonight.
I also thought James White did a very nice job, a commendable job as a third down back. Essentially filling the role of Shane Vereen, who is now playing football in New York for the New York Football Giants. Defensive side of the ball. First defensive snap, it was Chandler Jones getting in on Aaron Rodgers. Had to like that. Also had to like a couple of the defensive rookies, Malcolm Brown and Geno Grissom, really getting in some pressure, and Rufus Johnson as well.
Rufus Johnson was the guy who we talked about, youngsters who stood out on the offensive side of the ball, and Chris Harper. I think the defensive youngster who did the best tonight and made the most of his chances was Rufus Johnson. I thought Johnson had a great night tonight, getting consistent pressure. Again, you kind of take it with a grain of salt because you consider who he's going against, but Johnson certainly sets up as one of those guys to watch in the next few weeks. If he can continue to present consistent performances, he's going to be a guy who's going to be a candidate for the 53-man roster, at the very least a practice squad spot.
All right, that'll be a wrap here from inside Gillette Stadium, where again the Patriots lose their preseason opener, the Green Bay Packers, by a score of 22-11. Next up for the Patriots, they are scheduled, at least for right now, to close up training camp practice with the final public practice on Saturday outside Gillette Stadium before they get ready to travel to West Virginia for joint practices with the New Orleans Saints, and then a preseason game next weekend in the Superdome against Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. Another high-profile quarterback on the preseason docket for Tom Brady to go up against. We'll see how much Tom Brady plays, if at all, next weekend. That'll be a wrap from inside Gillette Stadium. For Christopher Price, I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.com.